is Octave Leap. Innovation, regeneration, and human optimization.
Welcome to the Octave Leap podcast with your host, David Kahn. And I'm not in my spaceship today because the power is out across all of South Africa. So I've just got a little thing running my Wi-Fi, but I can still come to you. I can still do this show. I've got other systems in place because we are in incredible times. And that's what we're going to talk about today with our guest, Li. Li, how is it going today with you?
It's really perfect today. And thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. We're talking about some exciting things today. We're talking about going into the future with something called human design.
Yes.
But I think, Li, before we talk about the future of human design has a pretty interesting, unusual origin story to it. It's not something you hear every day. I mean, people have mystical experiences and they get downloads and all sorts of stuff. But the story with human design, I think, is a little bit unique. So I'm going to just ask you, you want to just relay in your words too, because I think this is the way you tell it is really interesting. In your words, how did human design start? And what is the meaning behind some of the things that happened in your experience?
Yes. So it started in 1987, in the beginning of January, when somebody called Alan Robert Krakauer, a native Canadian, was living on the island of Ibiza in Spain, and he wanted to escape Canada. I think it was 1983.
Oh, I don't blame him.
And so he wanted to. So he escaped to Ibiza, and basically, wasn't too interested in other people, but Ibiza, fun time, and so on. He started teaching there and got a little bit fed up. At least that's how he tells it. And then he had no money, and he rented, or he got the place, a kind of ruin, somewhere a little bit off the beaten track. And it is in this ruin that he had a mystical experience, which he later traced back to a previous experience in 1985, when one of the other teachers, I think, gave him something, I think a mushroom or something like that, so that he had a complete change of looking at the world. He started to read about astrology. He started to look at more esoteric stuff. And so that is about 2 years before, or he heard the voice. So he was sort of being prepared, and it took him from being a scientist to something that he wasn't, and he was not willing to be as well. He didn't want to be a guru. He didn't want to be somebody that people would look up to. He just wanted to live his own life. So he comes back from the village. He enters, it's 1987, he enters the area where this a little ruin is, and he sees a light in the ruin. And he was sure that he left by daylight, so he couldn't have left the light on. He enters, and what happens is that first his dog starts to falls down like he's dead, but he isn't dead. And he sort of hears a voice, but he's trying to avoid it. And then the voice this voice sort of tries to get him on board. And so the way he explains it is that he is losing all his body liquids, and and which I can't imagine. And then the voice says, "Are you ready to work? Take a paper and a pen." And this voice apparently started dictating 8 days and 8 nights without Ra eating anything, no stopping. So basically, he was in a bubble. And so the experience was extremely uncomfortable. The voice was had an urgency in it. So it was really like this voice had a window of opportunity to talk to him, to bring him, the guy who was brilliant, had a brilliant mind, was also artistic. So the voice chose a person who was able to translate the knowledge that he was given. So the knowledge that he was given was the mechanics of our beings. How does our DNA work? How does it apply in daily life? What is our personality? What is our design? And the voice was very specific in saying it was based on tropical astrological calculations, and that it was meant to differentiate, to teach people, show people how they are unique, and in a way also how to step out of your body of pain. Yeah, the pain body that Eckhart Tolle talks about. Some people call it slave self, some people call it the not self. That was the terminology used in human design. So he had those 8 days and 8 nights, and what happened after it, he sort of was in a trance, and then he started to do the human design with people in his friend circle, and they were like flabbergasted. How can it be so accurate? And it stopped him in his tracks as well. And then more people came from, I know you can do this, I know you can do that, I want to know more about myself. So all of a sudden he had a kind of audience around him that was visiting him also in the ruin where he wanted to live, because he didn't want to live.
It sounds a lot different than, today there's a lot of people who get downloads and they say that they've been chosen or they channel something, and they're the ones having to tell other people and trying to build sort of an attraction to them. But he didn't want any of that. He sounds like he actually didn't choose this. The voice selected him.
Yes.
And then he tried out what he learned, and it kind of it became very popular. Other people became very magnetized by it, as opposed to him trying to say, oh, I'm special, I got some sort of download or some sort of encoding from this being, and check it out. So that he didn't have to market it, which I think that gives it a little bit more credibility than sort of this other way around, where people go have these experiences, quote unquote, and go chasing other people to project the experiences upon.
Yes, it does. And what gives it more credibility is that he got so afraid of it, of the power of the knowledge that he had been given, that he was asking all the people he was drawing the whole human design body graph and mandala himself. There was no computer at that moment that would spit it out, right? And he asked everyone to destroy the information, and he destroyed a lot of his work as well. And then he lived. He thought he was living happily ever after. He had that experience. He gave human design. And then after half a year or a year or so, the voice came back with a vengeance. He couldn't avoid it anymore. Or the voice, or at least the pressure to do something with it. But he had a messenger in a way, and it was a lady. He specifically asked to destroy it, and it was a Dutch lady. So maybe that's the anarchistic Dutch, who don't do what other people ask you to do. And so she brought a paper, and then he retrieved all the information. So and then who are you going to? Yeah, he didn't want to be the one person that everybody came to. So he said, I need to teach it to other people. Now, who were more destined to do that were astrologers.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what you're saying is that this system was given to him in a way, or presented to him by a non-physical being.
Yeah.
And that when he showed other people, they immediately resonated with it and the accuracy of it. He was scared of it, so he tried to destroy it. But then when his anarchistic friend didn't destroy it, and she told him later that she retained it, he said, okay, well, I'm going to go teach this. Now, my understanding was that he actually approached a group of German astrologers, and he was under the impression that only astrologers would be able to grasp the complexity of this system, of this body of knowledge.
Yes. And because the interpretation was different, but it still used the astrological calculations, right? So there is a lot of planetary alignment with astrology. Only it's not the star signs but it is the hexagrams that are in there. So human design is a combination of ancient wisdom and modern science, or ancient science and modern science. So it's the I Ching, that's the hexagrams, that's the basis of human design. It is the Kabbalah, it is the astrology, it is the chakra, or at least part of the chakra knowledge, and the genetics. So what is it's not only genetics, but it is all the epigenetics. So what in a hexagram, so the I Ching has 64 hexagrams, and it was used to be called the Oracle book, and it was written very cryptically, like 5,000 years ago, so that people who that people who had bad intentions couldn't do anything with it. That was the way how it worked. But it was a basic understanding of the order of the universe. So like the Taoism. And so in the hexagrams, you can also connect it not only to a specific gene, but also to the amino acids, which is really powerful, because if there is anything you want to change in your genetic makeup, or change or enhance, you could basically work with amino acids. And Richard Rudd is very specific. In every hexagram has an amino acid. So it goes very deep, but it is also the proof of the pudding, because there was a group of German scientists who discovered that they were not interested in human design. It was before human design, but that the hexagrams of the I Ching correspond with specific parts in the brain and specific genes or codons. So that was the connection that also I believe Ra was noticing very, very quickly, that there was validity. And the voice also told him that we, at our birth, moment of birth, we are bombarded with neutrinos. And it is the neutrinos, and the neutrinos come from the sun, through the star, through our star system, and it's basically what they say, stardust. But we are bombarded with millions and millions of neutrinos every second. And neutrinos didn't have mass. That was common wisdom, so it couldn't contain information. And then there was a German and Japanese scientist who discovered in the 90s that neutrinos had a little mass. And so the voice that proved to Ra as well that the voice had been right. And so basically those neutrinos, full of information when you are born, and that's why the astrological calculations are being used. When you are born, you get the information that everybody gets at that moment. Only you get it for the first time. So it is your unique song, your unique cosmic song.
It's interesting here, and I'm just going to kind of connect the dots that you laid out. But there's obviously in this system a correlation between the neutrinos bombarded from the stars and the sun through the lens of tropical astrology into that slice of infinite time when someone is born, to give them a very specific signature that then correlates with their own genetics, the building of amino acids in the body, and as well as their genes. So there's a correlation between the non-physical or energetic influences of stars and planets, as well as the actual makeup and chemistry and biology of the body.
Yeah, it basically means that we are part of one big system, right? We are part of our solar system.
I hope that's not news for anyone in 2022.
Well, we as humans, we have placed ourselves outside of nature, and we think we are not nature. So I think quite a few people who still believe that, that we are sort of are unique and can dominate our solar system.
Well, it's funny. I remember a few years ago, a friend of mine and I laughed because we were out in public and we heard these hipsters and they're like, "Hey man, I heard the sun is good for you." So you're right. I mean, there could be people out there that haven't had that realization of the interconnectedness of celestial bodies with the makeup of our own bodies. And maybe it is for some of the listeners of the show, but anyway, it no longer is, I think, after hearing something like that. They can begin to contemplate this idea if they're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
This is, it's so amazing and eloquent the way that you relay all this. I'd really like to take it in the direction of, so we know what sort of the story behind it, the history. I'd like to talk about what he said about the year 1783 through to the year 2027. So he said this is a very important transition in human evolution that was taking place during these pretty much 244 years. Can you speak to that?
Well, it is design. So human design has cycles, like the Earth has a small cycle every year, but it also has a yearly cycle, but it also has a much grander cycle that is 25,772 years or something like that, right? So and this is the basis for the cycles in human design, and it follows the hexagrams as well. So in 1615 we entered the cycle of planning. And then in 1781, there was an adaptation. So we changed the focus of, I would say, the focus of who we are changed, so that we were much more able to really plan, to really embody the planning. And so 1615 to officially to 2019, it was the cycle of the planning. And in 2027, there is a new cycle starting, and it is the cycle of the sleeping phoenix. So we are at the end of a cycle now. Yeah, so we have the aftermath of the cycle of planning, and we are moving into the cycle of the sleeping phoenix, so that the sleeping phoenix must rise again, must rise from the ashes.
Wow, what a word! The aftermath of the cycle of planning, ending in 2019.
Well, we were all shocked. Right?
Nothing big happened in 2020, right? Like,
right, exactly. We were completely shocked. Nobody could have predicted it. Not Ra as well. Ra died in 2011. Huh? Yeah. So everything that he was saying about this time, I mean, can be checked. And he was and it was, for him, it was just the mechanics. That's what he also always said. He's a teacher of the mechanics. And so the interpretation is in the hexagrams. The interpretation is in how are the cycles moving from one hexagram to another hexagram, or from one incarnation cross to another incarnation cross. So it was a big shock, but the shock was needed, because the age of planning, in a nutshell, was the age of non-individuality, of codependency or dependency on systems and constructions to help us build up, right? And so there was a lot of building up. They had the schooling system, the money, the whole monetary system, the scientific world, the religious system. Everything became, in the beginning, it served a purpose, because people came together, and from that togetherness, they were able to be more social, more so it didn't start out as what it ended with, that is a really oppression. And the systems were not working anymore in 2019. Only nobody wanted to believe it, because we depended on it.
I think that's one thing that we lose sight of, because these systems and institutions have been around for centuries in some cases, right? Yeah. So we weren't around at their beginning. We were literally born, and our entire life was spent in their waning shadow period, where they had already passed their expiry date. And in many cases, like you say, they've either become obsolete, or they've become abusive, or they've become, sort of outdated and trying to retain control by whatever means necessary. But we forget the fact that maybe a couple hundred years ago, these systems were actually very positive at one point. And maybe they were overtaken, or maybe they just fell into devolution or de-evolution.
Yes. I think it's a combination of quite a few things, right? But I think these systems had to keep people dependent, although it was good in the beginning. So the food source, the food supply, the whole infrastructure that was made, so that we had more hygiene, and there was also some sort of adventure in it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the advent, for instance, of pregnancy or birth-related deaths, or sort of babies that would die basically during childbirth, or even mothers. And now, we have medical technology that's decreased the mortality rate substantially. So that's an example of one area. Life expectancies have gone up tremendously across the world, right? Education and literacy has gone up tremendously across the world. So there's many positive things that we just take for granted, because we think they've always been there. They served a purpose, and the institutions that brought them in served a purpose.
Yes.
But then they tried to, instead of adapting, they just basically stayed fixed at that point in history. And when something is not appropriate, the longer it remains that way, the more sort of life just makes it glaringly obvious that it served its purpose and it's outdated.
Yes. And it's the whole, I mean, it is not only about breaking down or about changing. It doesn't work anymore. What people are now doing, and they call it innovation, is basically trying to improve the old systems. It's happening everywhere. It's not true innovation. It's not building something new. So in order to avoid or prevent that people are going to do that, so that basically you get another round of the cycle of planning, it needs to be completely burned down, the ashes. Mm-hmm. And so it is not anymore taking what was good and do something with it. It's really moving from this dependency into empowered individuality, but understanding that you are part of a community. But it is not anymore the we, as in we do it together and we can only do it because we are a society. But and the individual is being drowned. It's not being heard, and we see that now all the time. That your individual opinion is not appreciated anymore because it doesn't fully follow the party line sometimes. Right. So,
well, I mean, look at the rise of censorship over the last decade.
Yes.
Right. I mean, I've been on this thread for a long time, and I saw it begin in 2012, 2013 was the start of it.
Yeah.
You know, before that, it was under the guise of terrorism, and then it was sort of radicals. And, you know, I think Alex Jones is one of the first people who got censored in 2016. And then that began this larger thing. You know, he was the canary in the coal mine for a lot of other people. And I don't agree with everything he says, of course, but it was the test for what was to come. And now anybody who uses the wrong word on the wrong platform and the algorithms pick it up can easily lose their channel or their platform. And I mean, it's in the old days, they just would have killed somebody or taken them to a gulag. So I guess it's better than that. But it still shows us in this digitally connected world where we are interfacing over the internet, that if you don't have a platform and you don't have a voice online, you know, you're not part of the discussion of innovating. I also want to say something too. I just kind of want to comment on what you're saying because it's fascinating. And I feel like all I can really do is to add to it is to unpack it a little bit more. But what you said about burning it down as opposed to trying to reinvent the old, it reminds me of sort of the mechanics behind slash and burn agriculture, which they practice in America, right? Yeah. Where basically they say, okay, well, we need to actually refertilize the soil and restore the nutrient balance in the soil. So we're going to basically burn sort of the last bits of crops and sort of the leftovers and everything. And what happens is the ashes of that absorb back into the soil, and then the soil, the mineral balance is restored, and then new growth can happen.
Yes.
And I think at this point, farming, in 2 or 3 short years, we've gone from saying, you know, these things that, you know, they're going to be here, they're going to last, we need them, to basically saying, fuck it, it can all go. Just take it all.
Right. So, and this is where human design comes in, because the majority of the people isn't saying that. They want to get back, and they just call it, you know, the new normal. But basically, they want the old normal to work again, right? And then you see, and it's very tricky, and that's why, I mean, planning, the cycle of planning. It also means that there were people planning it. Not necessarily in a bad way. No judgment here. It's just mechanics. So,
you know, the more I look at this, though, this planning, though, and these plans, and sort of the overlords, and, you know, the shadow beings behind the scenes and stuff, what I realize is that they're just utilitarian. The ends that they're trying to accomplish,
Yeah.
in their minds, justify the means of deception and delusion and abuse and everything that goes in that bag. And because they're disconnected, because they're not tapped into life, they're not tapped into that beautiful experience that's unfolding in every moment. They have to be strategic and clever and essentially psychopathic in the definition of the word, where there is absolutely no heart. So they think they have to over intellectualize to compensate for the lack of heart. Yeah. And as a result of that, what we get is sort of this terrifying outcome where they're like, yeah, we achieved what we were planning and it's for everyone's good, mostly for our good, but a little bit for your good. I mean, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy according to us, our metric of happy, but actually you're depressed and anxious and we just have to feed you more pharmaceutical pills that we feed to you essentially.
Right.
And so, yes, absolutely. I mean, that it's a way of thinking. Charles Eisenstein wrote a great article about central bank digital currencies, and he wasn't taking sides, which is really interesting because most people are taking sides with that. Yeah. And basically, he said in the minds of these leaders, they truly believe they're doing the right thing. They truly believe that they should have unlimited surveillance powers and control over, miscreants and their ability to transact. Right. Yeah. The problem is that they're so detached from reality that they don't even realize how much damage and harm and suffering that their systems are causing.
Yes, because it's very abstract.
Yeah.
For them, huh? and this is in a way it aligns with the human design, which is in a way also abstract until you start to look at it and it becomes not two-dimensional, but it becomes three-dimensional. Huh? So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about this three-dimensional human design. I'm sorry if I'm moving a bit fast here. I'm on a little bit of a battery life because there's no power. So I don't want to get all this in succinctly. And maybe, that's just the way things work sometimes. But I think, you've touched on the history of it. You've touched on the evolution of it. Let's talk about what it unlocks for people, what you've seen in your over 20 years of practicing human design, the kind of changes that people experience when they really explore their own design.
Yes. Well, first of all, there's the moment you see your body graph for the first time, it starts to work for you. Yeah? So there is a part that is completely independent on any interpretation or any guidance or any definitions. Yeah? It is something that piques an interest, and it can take a lifetime or not for it to unfold or not. So there's much more interest now than it was back in 2017, for example. It was really hard to get people interested in human design. It was like a sort of secret tip to if you want to know about yourself. So what it tells you not only something about your personality, but it also tells you a lot about of the design of the genetics that you took along when you decided to be born. And that's so you take on, and that is the unconscious part of yourself. It's the body, it's the genetics, it's your family lineage, right? So that comes as a sort of basis, and then your personality comes from the moment you're born. That sets the tone, but it is a combination of both. So you basically get something new. It is merged in this body graph, and that is you in this life.
That's so cool because I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and in astrology we have the 4th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house, and that's typically where you look for. The 4th house talks about your hidden genetics, your specifically the paternal genetics. The 8th house tells you about your emotional sort of transformational journey, a sense of accidents and things that will befall you to create change in life. And the 12th house is the subconscious mind, the things you can't see but are trapped by. However, with the lens of human design, it takes into consideration astrology, but then it seems to unpack and go into great detail this level of genetics that is still a little bit murky and mysterious in astrology.
Yes. It's also in human design, Ra was not finished when he died. And there was a lot he wanted to do. And his death was sort of, fast. It was not really like he had a long sick bed or something like that. So what he wanted to do was the hexagrams with the genetic coding, to write them in a less shocking way. And that is what Richard Rudd did in 2002 already, right? So so that so that the translation was easier, what you can do with it in your life. But basically the most important thing, especially at this moment in time, is to learn about how you best make decisions for yourself, and where are you being influenced, conditioned, even manipulated sometimes to say yes to things that really are not serving you, and take you away from your true self.
I literally had shivers up my spine as you were saying that. There's absolutely no new age fluff in this esoteric system, is there? It's like the heart of the matter. What is your conditioning? What is the thing that, you give your power away doing in life, mentally, emotionally, physically, genetically?
Yeah.
And when you bring the light of awareness to that, what changes? How can you take that lens and tilt it in a way so it serves you?
Yeah.
We do have a couple questions here,
Yeah.
Specifically from Elaine, and she's asking, how do you learn about the decision making?
Well, in a nutshell, it is one of the easiest things in your human design to see. It's called your authority, which is a great name, and it is there are 7 different inner authorities, based on your design. So I think I did a class on this. Did we offer it for free or not? Or
We actually have an offering where people can learn about their decision making. We have a special deal today. We'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah.
So Li has actually put together a class that we're hosting on Modern Mystics called Intro to Practical Human Design, or Practical Human Design, sort of an intro to it. And it's a beautiful class. I mean, I took it, and actually pretty much my whole team's taken it at Octave Leap, because it's so revelatory. And the fact is that the beautiful thing that you do differently is, if you go to study human design, it's a huge thing of what I call book glut, where you just take this one module after module after module, and they're selling it. I mean, it's a business, it's an institute, and they have admin staff and a marketing team and websites and offices and all the overhead expenses. But you basically distilled that down into the practical teaching. We don't have time to go through this process anymore, right? I mean, at this point, we really just need to be direct. We need to go right to the heart of the matter. And we basically need to figure out how to alleviate this last bit of conditioning from ourselves in order to be free, in order to transition into this independence age, this sleeping phoenix age, as you've called it.
Right. So there's coming back to the decision-making strategy, it's something probably that I should do another, a free class or something like that, because it is so important to know. But then what you do with it, right? And that's, you still, in my opinion, you still need to know where you are open to influences, where you are open to being conditioned, and to being manipulated. So the your decision making strategy is one thing, and it's really important. The other thing is how do you apply it? Because the mind is tricky, right? Your decision making strategy, your inner authority, is your gut instinct, right? And we know now that the gut instinct actually feeds the brain, right, is it has nothing to do, basically, it's the commander of of our mind. So this is also why it's very important to to take care of your internal, so your digestive system, so your intestines, right? The more polluted you eat, the more artificial you eat, the more your mind starts to adapt to artificial things.
Yeah.
So so that's another rabbit hole to get into. But you can, and you I say that you have to understand that the moment you have your gut instinct has a very low or almost silent voice. It sometimes it rumbles, sometimes you feel your body moving or moving away. So it's different for different people. But the moment you are not listening to it, your mind comes in and starts to make all the excuses why you shouldn't do this or why you should do something else, right? So the words I must, I should, and then all the other things, when the other emotions and motivations come in from if I don't do this, I will feel guilty for the rest of my life. Yeah. And the morals of everything, all the manipulation of the morals, you have to be a good girl, good boy, and you have to do this and this and this. It's all singing in the choir of the mind.
Well, the analogy, and it's interesting in human design, there's no authority that resides in the mind. There's no inner authority that actually originates in the head centers. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people who've done any sort of self-discovery work will know that the mind is a computer, in the sense that it operates on programming, right? Whether that programming is external or it's internally driven. People who have deconditioned themselves and who are sovereign have beautiful minds sometimes, because it's like you say, it's being fed by their own internal fires, and their own gut is basically giving the raw energy and resources that work through the machinery of the mind for communication and problem solving and, scientific experiments and whatever creativity, of course, because, we can't discount the mind, especially as a creative. There's a technical side to every creative endeavor that we do that is, procedural. It does require a learning of knowledge. And so, this whole thing in the New Age saying, oh, just, give up your mind or get rid of your mind. It's tossing something out, and that's not whole. But the mind is such a misunderstood thing because of the degree of external conditioning that goes with it.
Yes. And what they also know now is that we are not the mind. Mm-hmm. There is a listener. Whenever you have a self-talk, you understand, you hear that, but who is listening?
Right.
And that is where we somehow are not allowed to go. Right. So the whole mind science is focused. The brain and the brain health. I'm a brain health coach as well. So this is what you learn. Even in mindfulness, you learn about the mind, but you don't learn about who is listening. But that is your true self. Mm-hmm. And that one is independent on the physical mechanics.
Right.
And so the easy way, that's what it's easy for me to say. The easy way is to learn about your inner authority, about your decision-making strategy, and really hone that skill, and also learn where the mind is bound to take over with the choir of all the excuses, the must, the do's and don'ts, and all that. That you start to experiment with it. And this is one of the things that Ra Uru said, the founder, he got that name from from the voice, although he started to call himself Ra earlier than 1987. But so he got that full name. He said, we are, oh, I'm losing track now. I'm going too fast for my mind. And we are in a big experiment and with ourselves. So the moment you hear about human design, you hear the basic elements of the human design, and then you can start to experiment. And you don't do that all in once. So you take one thing, you take another thing, and where do you start? They used to start with the type, with the archetype, although the archetype came later. In the beginning, Ra didn't talk about types. There was just one way how to distinguish certain people in to be and to do. The types came later. That was more of a scientific research done by a psychologist.
Okay.
And Ra, who needed to explain things that he was seeing in the chart to people so that they could understand.
Yeah.
But and in one way, it is good. In another way, it labels too much. Sometimes, and especially when you hear, I am this or I am that, and now it's really everybody wants to be a projector. When and a few years ago, everybody wanted to be a manifester, and every time I and especially the last few months, I had a few people who didn't want to believe that they were a generator and not a projector. They want so badly to be.
People love putting themselves in boxes, right?
Yeah, and I said, okay, we are everything. This is one thing that really has to you really have to know about human design. Even if you see things that are colored in and some things are white and not circled, it doesn't mean that you don't have it, because we have it all.
Right.
Yeah, but it means that you don't have a regular, trustworthy access to it.
Gotcha.
So those areas are the areas where we are bound to be influenced by other people or conditioned. Yeah? So, and then we learn how to be our not self. Yeah? What we are is is that what they call definition. What we are, the colored, the colored centers, the circles, the gates that are coming. So the hexagrams, the circles there, each center, there are 9 centers. That is what changed, what you were referring to earlier. That changed in 1781. So there is a reason why basically there was a split, because it will be split off again. We still have a survival instinct. We still have a center called survival instinct. We needed that. We needed to be able to react immediately to immediate danger. However, we don't basically need that anymore so much, right? Maybe in a few years, when everything is burned, has gone into ashes, maybe we do need it again. But I don't think so. So it's basically our primitive instinct, and it takes a lot of energy, because it is a fear center. And what does fear do? It takes you straight to the brain. Basically you are trying to analyze the fears and whatever, but fears are not there to be analyzed.
Right.
Fears are there to act on immediately.
They say the left brain is connected with our fight or flight, the reptilian brain. Yeah. So it's fascinating that when the fight or flight kicks in, we get in our heads very quickly.
Yes.
So we do have to wrap this up. And I think I'm going to invite you again on this show to talk more about human design, because this is absolutely fascinating. People, the comment section is going wild with this. But I did want to talk for a couple minutes here about some of the ways that people can learn more about themselves in a very unique way. So Li's put together basically a 6-part journey where you can learn about your inner authority, your decision making, and it's called Practical Human Design Module 1. We've actually got a discount code for 15% off in the description, and the link to find this is in the description as well. So if you're interested in beginning your journey, understanding your design, how your energy flow works, and gaining some self-knowledge about your decision making, this is an incredible way to do so. So you can find it in the description below. And Li has also created something specifically for parents. And I'm just finding my way back here.
Yes, I can say something. Why I decided to offer something for human design for parents, and it's a workshop, because it is so needed that parents start to help or guide their children in basically into the new world, the world without the planning, without those structures, so that they can learn how to make their own decisions, so that you can learn about the role you are here to embody, and learn where what you are instead of what you aren't. So, okay, I go on. I was thinking, what is happening? But I'm still there. Thank you, Micah. So it is really important to have this to at least train your children to listen to their gut and to trust who they are. This authenticity, the authentic being that we all are, and what we are not allowed to be anymore, because we have to follow the rules of the game. So when you can only do a few things, give your children a few things, then that will help them, and it will prevent them also from moving in, from getting burnouts, from getting depression, from not able to feel well in the world. And you see it happening now, and of course the last few years have been instrumental for that. So the whole of the body of knowledge that is of the mechanics of human design is basically for our children, and of course for us as well. But we have been conditioned, and I'm 65, so I have been conditioned for 65 years, right? And I'm still in the process of understanding how to really not immediately move into my conditioning, but really take time in my inner authority, and then say, and I have to sleep over things, to really say, okay, no, can I sleep over it? Yeah, so I'm not saying yes and no anymore, but so quickly, which can be totally irritating for other people, but and it's also at work, it might not be possible, but at least you give yourself a little bit of time when you have an emotional authority. So if you know that from your kids, you cannot force the kid, say emotional authority, then you cannot ask the kid to decide immediately on important things. And you can tell the child, go sleep over it and then come back, or you can start asking close questions, but that is another topic in itself. Good. That's I can close down now. But that is what I wanted to say about this workshop. The workshop for human design for parents is really really helping both, so the parents and the kids move authentically into the future. So and the future is coming quickly. The 2027, the new cycle, and we will see more breakdown of systems. People will feel more loss, and because your safety belt is sort of not there anymore. Yes, things you see it now in Europe. It is all about having enough warm water and heating this winter. It is all about this. So we are being we are feeling into the lack of things, and then it's so good to know actually what you really want. And instead of what people say, I need warm water every day. Yes, it would be really great, but there's also ways how you can move from a need to something you just appreciate and love. So I have to get my glasses, otherwise I don't see what is on. Good. Anyway, so and then the training and the practical human design, it is meant to be practical and meant to experiment with. And I think you put in a discount code, right, for the people who are watching and taking it. So then I'm wrapping up and thanking Dave for the chance to talk about it, to talk about human design. And here's Dave outside.
I'm
wrapping up
outside
now.
on the balcony. Last little bit of
Oh my
self-perception.
goodness.
We can finish this up on my phone, but I know you have so much to say about human design that I know I had faith that while I was gone, you just had a lot to share that was valuable wisdom for people. So
I was shocked.
I wasn't even worried.
What's going on? And then it's the stream off, but then Micah said, no, I can continue. And this is a perfect example. We depend so much, we are on electricity for the things to work, for communication. And that's also one thing that when we relax in our own authority and we get out of the FOMO, the fear of missing out, then you can also wait until the electricity is coming back on. So that's to do the things you want to do online. So I think it will be a really interesting time, and that is one reason why this practical human design basic training of the basic elements is also on demand. So you can do it at your own pace and independent on if the electricity is working now or not.
Did you also tell them about the what you're offering for parents to understand their children?
I did,
great.
and why it is important. Yeah.
That's really special, especially now. We have a young one who's named Phoenix. So interesting name.
Oh, wow.
Given the human design implications for the future. So learning more about what Phoenix offers through a system like human design could be very powerful in understanding her needs when she can't even speak yet.
Yes, and teaching and showing her the embodiment of making your own decisions based on really what you feel deep down.
Yes,
because we keep here. I mean, you will have that as well in your consultations and in your readings. That people say, but actually I knew it, but I didn't do it. But if I'm looking back, I had that first. So now,
that's always the funny thing that happens when you do a reading, and they're like, "Oh yeah, somehow I knew that already. Wow, it's like what you saw in that chart. I really already knew. I just wasn't applying to my own life." And that's kind of the irony of doing a reading. It's like you are telling people what they know about themselves at a deep level, and it's really people who become more aware of the mechanics of how they work it's more of an affirmation, versus people who are not fully aware of their conditioning or not fully aware of their gifts. For them, it's more of a collective uncovering, uncovering those gifts with them and feeling what resonates. But I feel like for the vast majority of people, and I do say maybe there's a couple beings out there that don't need any more self-knowledge because they've figured it all out.
Yes.
I don't know if there are any, but maybe there are. But for the vast majority of people, a tool like this is only useful as long as they don't put themselves in a box with it.
Exactly.
I think that's the biggest issue. And
exactly.
Even with astrology, when people victimize themselves with their astrology, oh, I'm a Gemini, of course I'm going to be a flirt, or I'm a Capricorn, I'm born to work hard and not listen to my emotions, type of thing.
Yeah, and it is easy to fall in the trap. Huh? I have a friend, and her husband is a manifester, and well, then she gets frustrated with him, and then I said, yeah, but this is typical manifestors. That I don't want to hear about any manifestors anymore. It's just he shouldn't have done this, or he should have done that.
Yeah.
So and it's true. Huh? It is recognizable. You see certain things in people. So if you put manifestors together, manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors, you can see. And it's and you can see it also when you do it with the elements, with the 5 elements. You can also do it with the 9-star key. Huh? That's the Chinese, Japanese astrology based on the 5 elements. You can see it very clearly, and but that's and it's interesting. So there is truth in it, but actually you are not that. You are a unique being coming here in this world with special traits, special gifts, special talents, and it is like a fingerprint. It's like a fingerprint. There will never be anyone like you after you've gone, and there was never anyone before you, before your time. So, and it's not for nothing.
Yes.
Right. So sing your own song, and the only way you can really sing it is when you have a basic understanding from where you feel where you are taken out of yourself.
Thank you, Lee. What a beautiful note to end this wonderful, incredibly rich discussion that we've had today. And so I really hope people take these words and they soak in them, and that they're able to use this to understand more about themselves and understand more about the areas where they may be experiencing conditioning or manipulation, to free themselves of that and to align with the energies as they're present in this day and age. Thank you so much for joining us on the Octave Lee podcast today, Lee. And again, the links are in the description below to find out more about Lee's offerings. Thank you very much, everybody. And
thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.